Welcome, Sober on Purpose family. I have somebody who's just delighted me. He told me to introduce him as a dude who is really tall and wrote a book. So I live in a house of trees, as you all know. Everybody in my house is 6'2" to 6'4", and Mr. Daryl Dittmer is 6'6". Is that correct?
I am. It's true.
Awesome.
I'm one of the trees.
Did I just butcher your last name?
It's Dittmer.
Dittmer, thank you.
You're good.
Thank
Yep,
you.
no problem.
So, Daryl Dittmer is with us today, and what struck me is he wrote a book called When I Stop Fighting: The Unexpected Joy of Getting My Head Out of My Ass. Now, as you all know, this is a clean show, but the book just cracked me up. So, Daryl, tell us a little bit more about how the book came to be.
Sure. And thank you, Tanya, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I was, well, going back, I grew up in a Protestant work ethic household in the Midwest, and we were taught work hard. We were taught never give up. We were taught you're not hurt if there's not a bone sticking out, all those sorts of things. And so life was a wrestling match, and that was what we were taught. The harder you go, no pain, no gain, all those kinds of things. And so that's what I grew up with. And it was a very blue collar sort of, get down and work hard kind of household. And those being my beginnings, when I got involved in drinking and drugs early in my teens, and that went through until I was in 18. There was basically an intervention done, and I ended up in treatment. And so early of being 19 years old, I was in treatment and for a 30-day inpatient program. And I like to say, before I was old enough to drink.
Yeah.
How does that happen? But anyway, so I got sober. I went through treatment, and it was difficult, and I was wrestling, and sobriety at some point has to become just life and how I live my life. But I had no idea at that time that that's what it meant. So I was trying to figure out, from the pains of being just a 19-year-old kid and just getting my life together, and putting all those pieces together, as well as dealing with trying to be sober. So it was not an easy task at that point. And about 8 months into a 12-step program, I was introduced to my sponsor, and actually I introduced myself to him because I wanted somebody that was going to help me navigate these things. And I for whatever reason, I looked for somebody who I thought was peaceful and not as chaotic internally as me. And he had been sober about 15 years at that point. And as he watched me wrestle with everything, he said to me one day, he said, "Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops."
Oh.
And
Mm-mm.
amazing. And it didn't mean nearly as much to me then as it does now, but something in me pinged at that time, and it's been pinging ever since for the last several decades, as I've tried to get better at this thing called life. And so that's how the title of the book came about.
Can we back up just a minute to the intervention? I know there's plenty of listeners who have thought about that. What does that look like? Now, I know that's been a while and it was probably different then. How did your parents, your grandparents, the people around you even know that this could happen, or find people to do it? Or how did it even happen for you at 18?
Well, it was basically my parents, and I know my mom had been talking to counselors. He had talked to other people whose sons and or daughters had issues with drugs, and it wasn't a huge hammer that hit me when I walked in the house and 10 people sitting there. It wasn't anything like that. it was, hey, we want you to go talk to this counselor, this drug and alcohol counselor, because we think that you're in trouble. And if you're going to go, we want you to meet us at this place and this time. And we set up this appointment with this guy. And if you don't want to, then, we're going to have to rethink our relationship, basically, which is a nice way of saying it.
Mhm.
It wasn't quite that nice, but so that's what happened. And then there was probably, I'm guessing, a 2-week period where I had to figure out whether I was going to go see this counselor or whether I was just going to kind of check out of the family and go away with whatever I had, which wasn't anything.
Right. Looking back
So
on that, have you had a chance to ponder? Because I have an 18-year-old right now. And there are plenty of 18-year-olds who would have said, "Fine," grabbed whatever they could grab, said some choice words, and left. What do you think you did, they did? What clicked that you said, "Okay, I'm willing to even think about this"?
I was scared to death. I was scared to death, and I did not want to go talk to this counselor. And my plan was, as I had learned over the past few years of drinking and drugs, that lying was my best way to try to get out of things. And that's what I planned to do, to talk to this counselor. And I'm not even certain, honestly, why I ended up going. I think there was a moment of clarity, which I think is really important. And as I've gone on in life from that point, there have been many moments of clarity where
Mhm.
things, you just this little tiny thing that just sort of sticks somewhere, and it doesn't allow you to go in a different direction. So there was a little something that pinged, and I ended up going to see that counselor, and I was planning on lying to him. And the moment I walked into his office, he said, "You can't lie to me. You can't BS me. You can't." And I was like, "Oh, that stinks." Because then he intimidated me, and I
Ah,
didn't say anything other than I was intimidated. I was like, "Oh man, this isn't going to work with this guy." Um, and it had been failing as a strategy for a little while, but
uh-huh.
it was still the strategy, because it's all I had.
And now you could have continued into treatment and lied your way out of it, done all but this worked for you. I know there are people sitting in the audience going, "Daryl, why did this work for you? My kid's been through 3 treatment centers." Was there something that happened differently?
Between when I spoke with this counselor and when I went into treatment, was January 31st, or no, I'm sorry, December 31st of 1984. And
Mhm.
I went to a New Year's Eve party, and there were, I don't know how many people were there. There were a lot of people there, and I don't remember who was there. I don't remember who I saw. I don't remember who I spoke to. I don't remember any of that. But I do remember the piece where I wasn't sure that I wanted to be on this planet anymore. And
Mhm.
and so I came to that point, and January 3rd was the day that I went into treatment. So something clicked again where I decided, I'm not sure what I decided, other than I decided I didn't want to live that way anymore.
So, when I stop fighting, that's probably one of the first ones. How has that shown up in your life on a regular basis?
Everywhere. um Everywhere and everything. It's interesting, because the fight is, and we look at it like the fight is alcohol and drugs, if that's what our issue is, the addiction stuff. And it doesn't have to be alcohol and drugs. It can be a number of different things to be
Absolutely.
addicted to, and that can be the fight for sure. But But as I've moved on, I've found out that Bud was talking about me. Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting
Mhm.
stops. And you know who I'm fighting myself. So,
Mhm.
and it becomes much more subtle over time. But for me, when I first got into sobriety, it was I turned on, I'm going to call it the butt kicking machine,
Mhm.
for the sake of
My
cleanliness and
clean
the, yeah,
reputation on this show.
exactly.
Thank you, I
Um,
appreciate it.
no problem. So the butt kicking machine was something that I could turn on anytime, and I could, and especially as there's coming from a place where I'm very dysfunctional, trying not to be. So I'm saying to myself, oh, well, gee, I can't think that way, or I can't have those feelings, or, I can't. And it's not whether or not I can or I can't, it's that I kick my own butt because of those things. And that's the fight. Those are the things that are the fight. And there's this word that I became familiar with, a long time ago, but I've become more and more familiar all the time. And it's called allow. I can allow life to happen, and I can allow
Mhm.
things to happen, and I don't have to wrestle, and I don't have to wrestle with myself, and I don't have to beat the crap out of myself all the time, and I've dealt with people, a lot of people in recovery, or who need to be in recovery, or trying to be in recovery, and also their family members, and my family members, who have gone through these things. And it's the same for all of us. The greatest fight, in my opinion, is with ourselves. And
Mhm.
that's the work. That's the work that can change, not the world and not everything that happens around us, but change our perception of things and how we treat ourselves.
So what would you say to those parents who are saying, "What did I do wrong? Why is my kid struggling like this with whatever that, like you said, it could be all kinds of addiction issues. It could be struggling in school. It could be all of these struggles. But instead of looking for outs, they just keep turning it back on themselves. How have you found a way to get out of there?
That's a difficult one, and it's difficult because, and for me, I blamed myself for all that I put my mom and dad through, honestly.
Mhm.
And I know my mom certainly asked herself the question, what did I do wrong? My dad had a little more of a sordid past. Great man, but
Right.
he had his problems, and he had his issues. So I think he was less concerned than my mom was. But I know my mom asked herself those questions, and I asked myself those questions. But that there's it to me, there's something greater at work. There's something, everybody has their own path. It's not anything that my parents did wrong, honestly.
Mhm.
And nobody's given a handbook when they come into this life, and nobody's given a handbook before they become parents.
Mhm.
It's a learn as you go program. And I think it's difficult to see the people we love on any side of addiction,
Mhm.
or whether it's the codependency or whatever it is. It's difficult to see. But for me, the focal point has to be not to look at myself and blame, and not to look at anybody else and blame. It has to be, what am I going to do to be the best I can be for everybody around me? And
Mhm.
that's, as we go, I think that's what matters the most. Anyway, I hope that answers, or gives a good answer in terms of the question, because it's such a delicate part
Sure.
of the recovery process on all sides.
You talk about unexpected joy. Can you share some scenarios of unexpected joy when you quit fighting yourself, basically?
Yeah, eh, you know, there was a time in my life when, and again, I grew up in a blue collar family. We had our needs met. We certainly weren't poor, but there were a lot of things that we didn't have, and that was
Mhm.
fine. And so when I got sober, I was like, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna tear this up and I'm gonna do this world thing, and I'm gonna figure it out and blah blah blah. So I did a lot of that, and I tried really hard, and a lot of it worked and a lot of it didn't work, and I had a lot of failures and a lot of losing, and some winning and some successes, and it all sort of worked together. But and everything was a stepping stone to get to the next place,
Mhm.
which is a beautiful process to watch as that unfolds outside of us, but more importantly inside of us. And so as I was trying and wrestling and fighting and doing all these things sober, because right, we can do the same things sober unless we consciously change those things. At least I did. And as I worked to change those things, and I there was a part of it where at one point all I wanted to do was just wake up in the morning with a smile on my face, and
Hmm.
that became success to me. And
Mhm.
that was how I defined success, and I've defined success that way ever since. So a lot goes into that, and that is the unexpected joy in my life that has shown up as a result of doing a lot of the things that I was shown to do by my mentor and other people that have come in my life. But for me, that's the biggest unexpected joy, that I can actually wake up in the morning, want to face the day, go through my daily, the routines and the things that I do to further um, those joys and how I feel about life, and honestly, it's just been more than I ever would have expected that life could be.
Let's dig a little deeper, because what the audience may not know without popping over to your website is you're a very successful person. You were able to start several businesses, turn that entrepreneur energy on, and then retire at 48. So, how do you? What is your day like? How do you set yourself up for joy to wake up with that smile on your face? Because there are so many people who are like, "Ugh, it's morning again," and they're just crawling out of bed, barely making it.
Yeah, for me, it's my daily habits, and for a long time, freedom has been the goal.
Mhm.
Freedom, and and again, there's the external and there's the internal. For me, I don't get the external until I work the internal and I get those things handled. And for me, it's my daily habits. That's how I turn on the spigot of a life that just feels good on a daily basis. And it has to do with how I treat my body, how I treat my mind, how I treat my heart, and how I treat my soul. And so I do things like conscious breathing practice in the morning, meditation practice in the morning. I practice gratitude, uh, every morning for sure, but then throughout the day. And sometimes I just look around and experience my life, and I say thank you. And it doesn't have everything to do with what's outside of me. It has to do with what I consistently practice, that takes care of my insides. And that's for me. That's how I have been able to wake up with a smile on my face, because I have to take care of myself, and I have to take care of all aspects of myself. And those are the components that allow me to do that.
So, in your book, you say, "I can be a victim of myself or a product of the world or a product of the work I do to become a better version of myself." Now, Daryl, is this possible for everybody?
I absolutely believe it is, and that's why I wrote the book. Truly, it's to give that information to as many people as I can, because it's easy consistency in habits work both ways. If I have habits that are destructive, I'm going to go in that direction. If I have habits that are constructive and help me achieve a better life, then I can go that way. And that's really what it's boiled down to for me. It's been a life of exploring, of learning, of finding out what works, for my body, as far as, the exercise and what I put in my body, and what I allow in my life, in terms of my mind, and my heart. Who am I allowing in my life? They told me a long time ago, if you change the game, you got to change the players. And I truly believe that worked for me, because the people that I was hanging out with back then aren't the people that were going to carry me to the quote unquote promised land, in terms of just feeling good about my life. So there's a lot of things that we need to do. And I truly believe that there's a little something that everybody knows what they need to do. There's a little voice that, if we can clear out some of that clutter, there's a little voice that tells us, this is the right thing, this is not the right thing for me, not for the world, but just for me. And I believe if we can follow that and explore that and learn more about that it's available to everybody.
What are folks going to find when they pick up your book and read through it? What do you hope they take away from it?
I hope they take away that it's about stories, and I've told a lot of stories, and I've told the stories that make up my life, from addiction and dysfunction, to recovery and taking risks and freedom. I want people to be able to relate. I'm not the, you have to do this kind of person, or you need to do this kind of person. I want people to relate to my stories and be able to say, hey, I was there, or, you know what, that worked for me, or that didn't work for me, or, hey, I know what he's talking about here. I think that's the greatest way to be able to tell, or at least help people see the way to change, is to be able to relate to those stories. So that's what I want people to do, to be able to relate, and whether it's a family member or themselves, or even if it's a mom who's looking at her son saying, I want to be able to help this person, maybe my book helps tell the story from the perspective of the son.
And also for the mom to say, hey, look, you got to fill your own cup first, because if you don't, then you don't have anything to pour out. And that's where I find with the families that I work with, that they're pouring out and pouring out and pouring out until you're trying to gather things from a dry well. So this unexpected joy in this book is being able to fill your well again.
100%.
So Daryl, where can we find you? What else do you have to offer? I know you have a podcast, you've got a book. Talk us through some of the things that you do to spread the message of unexpected joy in the world.
Thank you. I do. I'm just actually starting a podcast, and just did my first episode last week. So very excited about that. That's going to be on YouTube, and it's under When I Stop Fighting, is my podcast page. But probably the best way to find me and also find the books is at my website, which is www.daryldittmer, DarylDittmer.com. If you'd like to just go straight to the books, or my book, it's on Amazon. And if you type in When I Stop Fighting, or you type in my name, the book will come out. Actually, this is what it looks like.
Awesome.
Orange. You can recognize it. And if you'd like to email me, if there's a question or a thought or something you'd like to run by me, certainly feel free. My email is Daryl, DARYL, at DarylDittmer.com.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes. I wish you exceptionally well on your podcast, and I hope you did an audio version of your book because your voice is perfect for audio.
I I did. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us on Sober on Purpose. And if you have the opportunity, hop over to his website. It's one of the clearest, the cleanest, and the easiest to move around I've seen in a long time. So it's just a joy to speak to you today, Daryl. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to say, hey, I don't have to wait on somebody else to get well. I can do this.
Thank you, Tanya. I really appreciate your time and really appreciate everyone. Thank you very much.